Alright guys, what we have here is a 15-16 F350 single rear wheel, no big deal. So I don't have the funds to really buy a compound kit, so we're just going to make one. We're going to take an S475 from Borg and build a kit to fit this truck. So I'm going to show you guys kind of all the things that we use and how to make it work. So I bought a used turbo, 350 bucks off the old marketplace. We're going to pull the upper intake, lower intake, the hot and cold side pipes, and then we'll get started. We'll get the downpipe out and we'll get started getting the hot side from the primary to the secondary. I'll stop in between and kind of give you guys a parts list of what we're using. We'll get started. Alright, so here's the downpipe elbow. That's factory turbo here. I'm going to cut this factory V-band off, and then I'll show you guys why. So, what we have here is from Squirrely Fab. Just some 3-inch stainless steel mandrel bends. I bought the 180, and I think it's like the 135, and then a 45. And I got their 4590 and then 180. Got two different ones because I didn't know to get around the intake. These are cheap, like 125 bucks or something like that. So we'll get that V-band cut off, and then we will start. We'll bolt it back on, and we'll start fitting around the intake there and getting the S475 situated. So the reason I went with the 3-inch stainless is because the downpipe out of the factory turbo is 3-inch. So fit perfectly, just like that. Now, some of you, this is the point of no return when you cut this off. You cannot put it back stock, like back together now, unless you buy a new little downpipe elbow. So if you're worried about getting it running that day, don't do this. So, which I don't care. So we'll make it work. All right. So on the back of the turbo, I used the tape measure and just kind of went and got an idea how far back off the turbo I need to go and how far over. And it was about, I'm just giving a rough estimate, but about 6 and then to 14. So about that big of a U pipe is what I needed. And so we're just going to measure off 6 to about the center of the bend. And the Squirrely Fab pipe actually works pretty good. The radius does. So I'm going to cut a little extra on this side. Turbo will be right here. We'll see how it fits. So we'll cut them off. So I'm going to give you guys a little update here. I kind of took off without the video because I didn't want a bunch of time lapse. Since the turbo hot side is going to be sitting right here, you know, the signal pipe's going to go in right here, and then the discharge going right back into that turbo. I just decided to make the steel plate here, and we'll weld a bracket to hold the turbo here. But mainly it's just going to be resting right here. So that's that. And then back up in here, basically coming out of the turbo back there, it'll be running right beside my intake that's going to be piped in right here. And I left enough room where a 4-inch downpipe can snake back through there. So that's the update on it. So I know last I think I seen you guys was we were doing the hot side pipe going into the secondary turbo. So we've got that all fabbed up on the truck. I kind of took off without you guys because it was a ton of fabrication. This is not a weekend job. So here is the downpipe that I fabbed. So the secondary turbo is right here, blowing into the valley. So it drops down, the ECM's right here, is traveling right above the valve cover, and then drops off right off the back of the valve cover, kind of goes towards the center of the engine and then back down like the factory downpipe area. And I will have a slip, let me see if I got one, will be on the downpipe. It's supposed to be regular 4-inch here, but I forget the ID of these, but it'll slip over this and I'll use a clamp, one of them band style clamps right here. That way it'll be a 2-piece downpipe and you ain't got to move the cab. So far we haven't had to move the cab to get, like this snakes in kind of goofy like and drops down behind the engine. Then you put the turbo on, and that's with the hot side pipe already on. Everything should be pretty simple from there. So I'll show you guys what we have so far on the truck. Here's our fancy pedestal bracket. Has the 2 coolant bridge bolts here that the factory aluminum intake pipe bolted to. So reuse those bolt holes, and then we made a little collar here to utilize this bolt hole. Now in the future, if I was to do this again, I would make this plate dang near almost touch this fuel line. That way it'll shield the electronics and these return hoses from the turbo heat. But now the turbo will just rest on here and it just bolts up. So the weight of the turbo is just pushing down on this plate, and then this bracket is what holds the turbo from going left or right. We did leave a tiny bit of gap just for a heat shield, or not heat shield, a turbo blanket, so it'll squish it down flat. And then you have to have one of these no limit coolant heater line reroutes, which the downpipe is like way up here, so it clears that tremendously. But here is the hot pipe. Now it doesn't look like a 4-inch pipe will go back there, but it will. So you got this 3-inch squirrely fab pipe coming from around the back of the factory turbo, and then a 4-inch downpipe. So it's getting pretty crammed, but we're getting minimal clearance over here. It's very close. And it's going to be, everything's going to be close. So we have to run a turbo blanket to keep these wires from melting. Yeah, we'll snake the downpipe in there, and I'll show you guys what it looks like with the turbo mounted and the downpipe one. Have you guys in real time here. So, and you don't have to move the cab to put this pipe in either, if you do it right. Basically like that, slip right down in there, and then we'll get the turbo mounted and I'll V-band this on. But as you can see, not a super lot of room. I'm going to run heat wrap down back there to at least the elbow back there, but it's just getting a lot of cram spaces here. This will be fine. I would like to tell you guys where I've got these pieces from. So this is a 3.5-inch adapter. I got it from a guy named Kunshan Speedy Technic Company on eBay. It's just a S400 compressor outlet. And then the turbo drain, I don't know if you guys can see it, kind of down there. But it's a 10AN. I got it from Turbocharged Products on eBay. It was like 30 bucks. And then the turbo feed line, which I've already got it ran down there. I was just checking length. But it's a 4AN 42-inch. It's perfect with 190 on one side. And then the now the turbo outlet flange here, which goes from this goofy 5-inch to this standard 4-inch with the clamp. I got it from Power Parts -7 on eBay. It was pretty expensive, 70 bucks for that little piece, but it works good. And then this fancy T6 divided adapter. I got it from customfabshop.com on eBay. It was 150 bucks, but it is a nice piece, so it was worth it. And then this 3-inch to 3.5 swell pipe here I got from Fab Pros on eBay. It was 25 bucks, it's cheap enough. So, and I'm still waiting on some 3.5-inch intercooler piping. That way I can make the 90 and then the 45 down here. And I'm waiting on a 4-inch to 3.5-inch silicone coupler. So we'll get that. And then I'm also waiting on a 5-inch, since this is a 5-inch, I'm waiting on a 5-inch 90, silicone 90, and then I'll run an intake down with a mass airflow sensor and stuff. So there's the pigtails right here for the mass air, so it'll be super simple. But I will show you guys underneath here. right there is where my downpipe discharge is at. Here's that turbo feed line right here. So, but right there's the discharge, so it'll be super simple to come down through here. I'll show you guys way up there what it looks like. There's just not a lot of room for anything. So, anyway, on the turbo feed for the turbo, here's the line for it. This is a 3/8 pipe thread, so I'm going to put a 3/8 street tee right here, and then this sensor will screw in the back of it, and then I will put a 4AN to 3/8 reducer right here, so it'll screw in. In my turbo drain, I'm going to take off the lower pan, and then drill up here in the upper pan for 3/8 pipe thread to a 10AN fitting. So all that'll fit. I don't know if I can get a better view. There we go. There you guys can kind of see the back of the turbo up there. Yep, there we go. So now that we got the downpipe done, now we can start focusing on the charge pipe into the factory turbo. So I just got a 4" to 3.5" from MUSA or MUSA, whatever, because this is a 3.5" discharge here. So basically we're just going to take some 3.5" intercooler piping and get her plumbed in down there. Alright, so this is the outcome. Did 190, cut it a little closer to the radius bend there, and then 145 here, which we also bead rolled it, and then this was another 90 that I needed a little bit more than a 45. I need like a 70 degree or so, so I just laid my 45 up there and went a little extra, and that's it. Take you guys off the thing here. I don't have no bolts on this side, I just got one bolt on that side, so plenty of clearance here. Now I just gotta do this pipe. And obviously the air filter pipe. Getting there. Alright, so I'm gonna show you guys here on the so we got the oil filter out of the way, got the oil temp, oops, shit. Get this back up here where you can see the oil temp sensor out, and I've got the transmission lines undone. Now you're not going to lose a lot of fluid, but make sure you put a cap on these two tits so they're not dripping fluid on you. But so we're going to have to grind some of that ribbing down right there and put a fitting in. So underneath, see if I can find a better. You just have to find a flat spot in between this ribbing and here that you can grind off the ribbing out here with and be able to thread a hole and put a fitting in. It's kind of hard to do this by myself. I'll find a spot and we'll go with it. I'm thinking right here, right on the back side, just grinding this little ribbing down right by underneath this boss. This transmission bolt boss. That's probably about the best spot. Yeah, there's a better light right there. I'm thinking. Because then that's in a spot underneath where there's nothing in there. We'll see. Okay, so here I ground that ribbing down right here, the very edge, and we'll check. So we should have clearance there. But here is the fitting I'm going to use. Just a 10AN to 3/8 pipe thread. We'll drill it closer to that edge right there. And then we got plenty of room for oil filter clearance, plenty of room for this, transmission lines. So I just want to show you guys, here's what I used. I just used a 90-degree die grinder with a sandpaper disc, shaved it right off. So now I'll just stick my drill right through here, punch that hole, and then start tapping. Okay, so there's the fitting. I put Ford RTV around the threads and then threaded it in and then smeared around. It wasn't quite sitting flush, so I smeared it around to make it a little better. It's less prone to leak. That's what it looks like inside. See if I can get it to, but should work perfectly. Okay, so here we have the turbo drain, which I went over with you guys, got it all fitted. Here is the oil feed. So this is the oil temperature sensor. Screws in right here. When I unscrewed that, it's 3/8 pipe thread. So I got a 3/8 close nipple, 3/8 T, put the oil temp back in here. Now it'll still read because oil is going to be going to the turbo, so it'll still swirl around right there to read. And then I didn't have a 4AN to 3/8 adapter, so I just went from 3/8 to 1/4, and I had a 1/4 to 4AN here. So, but that's what it looks like. And this will go back right there. Not a lot of room, but should work. Alright, so here we got her all back together. As you guys can see, I wrapped the hot signal pipe to the second turbo, and then I've done a AFE filter here, 5-inch no limit pipe that I cut, and then a 5-inch 90 here, and a turbo blanket that does not fit from Thermal, forget the name of it, Thermal something. But that's it. Wrap the downpipe. Trying to keep the heat off everything, but and made this little pipe here, welded on a bung here, drilled. It's just under a 9/16 drill bit for this intake air temp, and then a set screw. Yep, that's it. Let's start it and see what happens.